Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhishek Jain, and I'm pleased to invite you all to the Know Your Exam or the KYE series by Planty. In this session, we will be focusing on cracking the NID DAT exam for an M.Des program in India. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Rhiddhit Paul, who is currently pursuing his Master of Design or M.Des in Information Design as a part of the 2020-2022 batch from the National Institute of Design, Bangalore. In this session, Rhiddhit will be speaking in detail on the NID DAT exam, how to prepare for it, and also how to score well in this exam. I would now hand it over to Rhiddhit to begin the session.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Rhiddhit, and although Abhishek's talked about how to score well in the exam and how to crack the NID exam, I think the NID exam being very different from all the other exams such as the IIT Advanced, JEE Advanced, and UPSC exams and all that you might have heard of. I'm not gonna actually call this presentation how to crack NID exam. What I will be doing in this presentation is maybe talking a little bit about me, a little bit about NID, and a little bit about how anyone can get into NID regardless of what stream they choose, or even what questions may come in the exam. Getting into NID is more about who you are as a person, right? It's more about mentality and mindset. So yeah, starting off with a little bit about me. I'm Rhiddhit. I'm an architect turned designer from NID. I graduated in architecture in 2020 from SPA Bhopal, and then I decided architecture maybe wasn't the right line for me, and maybe I wanted to focus more on the design process. So that's when I applied to information design as well as interaction design in NID. So I am basically a noob at everything I do. I'm a new noob musician. I play guitar, but I don't know what staff notations are. Right. I'm a noob gamer. I try to play games, but I suck at them. Noob architect. I didn't really stay in the architecture field much, even though I spent 5 years studying it. I am a noob photographer. I don't like studies at all. I hate people telling me what I should be studying, what I should be doing, whether there's a syllabus or not. I just like to explore stuff. I write poems, I write stories, I write songs, I watch YouTube videos, and probably that's where I learn the most from, you know. And I am a noob cyclist as well. I built my own cycle, so I'm a bit scared to ride it, right? At NID, everyone I know is simply a crazy bunch of noobs, right? We don't really call ourselves experts at anything. We always have a beginner's mindset with whatever we're doing. And that allows us to be more fearless when we experiment. We know things are probably going to go wrong. So we just try it out anyway. Like, if it's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong. Right. But at the same time, we always want to get better at whatever we do. Right. One thing to know is that as an NID graduate, I'm probably one of the 60 to 70% who did not do their bachelor's in design, right? NID takes up students from a variety of different fields: architecture, microbiology, mathematics. I've got friends from a variety of fields, right? So when everyone comes to NID, they have something else to offer. NID focuses a lot on peer learning. There are a lot of people who do not have a design background, but they decided it was just something they wanted to pursue. So regardless of their undergraduate studies, they took up a job as maybe a UX designer, as a graphic designer. They learned a bit about the field, and then utilizing their knowledge from their undergraduate studies as well as their practical knowledge from the field, they've tried to get into NID. So NID really values this diversity in the people who are applying. That's why, like, if you're watching this as a law student or even from any other background, it's very common for people like you who don't have a design background to still apply at NID. So at NID, there are mainly three campuses for the masters in design. There's the NID campus, which focuses on classical design such as furniture design or jewelry design, graphic design, communication design. There's the NID Bangalore campus where I'm at, which focuses on interaction design, tech, IT integrated design, we call it, design of mobile applications, design of new technologies, right? And then there's NID Gandhinagar, which is like photography design, design management, all that stuff. So NID was founded mainly by these guys, Gira Sarabhai and Gautam Sarabhai. They were industrialists and architects from Ahmedabad, and they got in touch with these guys, Charles and Ray Eames, who were at that time in the 1950s, 1960s, one of the most famous and most experimental designers in the world, right? So with the help of Charles and Ray Eames, once again a bunch of crazy experimental noobs, they set up NID with the hopes that India could get its own design language someday, right? So this is the Bauhaus College in Germany, and this is the philosophy that NID was, founded on, the philosophy of learning by doing. And what this means is that NID, may we don't have exams, we only study one subject at a time, maybe for like 3 4 weeks at a time, right? We don't really have deadlines either. If we've started something and we want to go further in it, you can do it. No one's going to stop you. And no one tells you what you have to do in NID. You can just experiment with whatever you want to do until someone actually says, no, you're crossing the line now. But that rarely happens. So NID as a university is a different sort of lifestyle altogether, right? It's something that the lifestyle that they try to offer is something that allows you to be more fearless when you experiment, right? You don't have you should it kind of encourages initiate you taking the initiative for whatever you do, right? So just some of the things that students at NID do, like making furniture out of scrap parts or lying around the house, making a utensil that helps you pour a packet of milk, you know, designing mobile applications, or even thinking about how drones in the future could be controlled with just hand gestures, right? So these are some of the things that we do at NID. Now, I'm I'm not too uh, keen on talking about how to get into NID, because there's really no fixed path. There's no syllabus that you can study. There's no books that you should definitely read, and there's no question bank of questions that they ask in the NID exam, right? There's three stages to the NID exam. There's the NID DAT prelims, in which they ask you common questions, like, okay, do you know what this logo stands for? Which company this logo stands for? Maybe they'll show you a logo of Google Chrome and ask you, like, which company does this stand for, right? They have, after you've cleared the prelims, they have like a studio test in which you actually go to the campus, and they give you a set of, maybe one question to do, maybe draw your life, but without using a timeline, right? A question like that: how do you represent your life or your journey through life without using a timeline? And the third stage is, when they see the work you've done before in your undergraduate studies, or not even in your studies, but in your life, right? It doesn't have to be a part of your education at all, right? And that is paired with an interview. So yeah, NID DAT prelims is divided into two parts. As I mentioned, the common design aptitude test, and then there's a subject specific test. So NID, like, yeah, the common design aptitude test, some of the things may be knowledge of logos, knowledge of Indian arts and crafts, architects and designers, design writers, elements of design, but there's really nothing fixed. They can ask you a question about, literally anything, right? Here the questions are objective MCQ types, but in the next part, which is the subject specific test, you have to actually pick one, maximum two subjects that you want to apply for in NID. And based on these subjects, they will give you a subjective questions test, maybe of 4 to 5 questions. And here it's important to know that there is no negative marking in NID exams. They want you to be free, they want you to be as crazy as you possibly can. But the important thing is you have to be crazy with a sense of logic, right? In my exam, I barely knew the answers of one or two questions for sure, right? But the remaining questions that I didn't know, uh, I just went crazy with them, and I justified why I was being crazy. There's if you think in NID exams that there's gonna be a correct answer, you're not gonna get through. If you think of only the correct answer, you're thinking like thousands of other people appearing for the exams, and that's not gonna help you set you apart, right? So the top 30 to 35 students appear for the studio test in a specific subject, and then the studio test is combined with a portfolio round, and I'll explain what a portfolio is in a while, and the interview round, right? But the main thing to know is what do you do on the day of the exam, or on the day of the studio test, or on the day of the interview doesn't matter. Preparation for NID starts way before that, and it all starts by getting your head around some of the myths that people have regarding getting into NID, right? Myth number one is people believe that only the most talented people get into NID, right? And I can tell you straight away that as soon as you think about having talent or not having talent, you're screwed, right? Talent is very subjective, but what matters is how far you push yourself to get better. You can start day one being really shitty at drawing, but if on day two you don't try again and you don't think of getting better, you've just failed. So NID is, people who get into NID, they are there to push through the barriers and get around the mindset of failure. They keep trying no matter what. That's because design as a process, it's about failing over and over again. In design we call it redos, or we call it iterations. It's about failing fast and failing often. That's what we say in design: fail fast, fail often. So, if you think that, oh, I'm not talented enough to get into NID, you need to get around that mindset. Myth number two is you have to have a design background to get into NID. Like I said before, 70% of the students who get into a master's at NID do not have a design background. What they do have, though, is like this determination to help people and actually take initiative, regardless of their background, for helping those people. I personally, I wasn't thinking of getting into NID before, before applying for the exam. I just felt that, like I actually, when I talk about taking initiative, while I was in architecture, I felt that more people in architecture needed to understand a bit more about graphic design. So I started an Instagram page, and I got people in architecture who are actually good in graphic design to post their stuff and explain their stuff on the Instagram page, so that other people could learn from it. And me and my friends, we also conducted workshops for graphic design for architects. So it's it's, I think the most important thing is that you need to want to help people, and the more initiative you take in that, the better chances you have of getting into NID past the interview round. Myth number three is for NID you need to forget everything and focus solely on cracking NID, right? A lot of people, they join centers, coaching centers, right? But the thing is, because NID is not like any other exam, it's not like IITs, it's not like UPSC. There's the more flexible you are with what you learn and how you get that knowledge, the better it is for NID, right? Maybe like, for example, I say keep NID as a backup option, because if your focus is on getting into NID, then during the exam you're going to be fixed on figuring out what the correct answer is, when there actually is no correct answer. What people who are judging the NID papers want is you are being original, you're being genuine, you're doing things that other people don't have the guts to do. And I think that's what people who get into NID have in common. They are very fearless in their initiatives. So yeah, keep NID as a backup option only because that helps you not have the pressure on your mind during the exam that I need to find the answer that everyone likes. You need to find the answer that is challenging the status quo of things, right? And not everyone likes that answer. So yeah, final tip is be like Michael Scott, genuine. Don't try to fake your way into NID. If you don't know answers in NID, it's best to say that I don't know it, but I would definitely like to learn about it rather than trying to give a false answer. Again, I'm just repeating this again: be fearless, be enthusiastic. What people in NID look for, who are judging in the interviews, and once again, I'm talking about the interviews mostly because that's the hardest part, right? They shortlist 35 students, but they only select 6 to 7, and that's based on the personality and nothing else. You have to be optimistic, you have to be enthusiastic, and if even if you're very technically skilled, even if you have like an encyclopedia of design knowledge, if you're not enthusiastic or optimistic or fearless, you're not going to get through. And the final myth is like you need special coaching for NID. Most people don't do any coaching at all. Most people don't even prepare for NID. They just watch Netflix. They learn as much as they can about design from Netflix, YouTube. They listen to podcasts. They doodle in their free time. They scribble. They try out different hobbies or read books or talk to people in the industry, and that's where the best learning comes from. That's where a broader aspect of learning comes from, right? If people are interested in learning creative hobbies like how to doodle or how to use like Photoshop or Illustrator to make posters, for example, or use a program such as JavaScript to code creatively, then a nice website that I would recommend is Domestika. It's for creative hobbies. They don't really have exams or anything. It's not like Coursera where you give exams, you complete assignments to get a certificate. But yeah, it is a nice website to learn about different types of painting, different types of photography, all that stuff that creative hobbies. um, yeah, I would like to say that yeah, self learning before NID is definitely the way to go. uh, you know a lot of engineers get into NID because they've just been member of the like photography team in college, and that's where they learned more about design. Or people have joined companies after they've done an honors in biology because they wanted to maybe become a graphic designer and learn while on the job. So getting into NID, most people know that in the first shot you're probably not going to get in, right? It's always best to get some experience as a designer in the field uh, before you join or apply for NID. Most design studios, they mention that it is not necessary to have a design degree to apply. They just want to test your skills and test your thinking, how you think mainly. So yeah, a few books that do help to develop a design based thinking are Design is Art by Bruno Munari, Hooked by Ned Ayal, and Emotional Design. They don't really tell you about how to draw. They don't tell you about what colors work best in a poster, but they do help you develop a mindset for design. Um, there are a whole lot of books that focus just on the mindset that you need to have for design, and I feel that's very important. A lot of undergraduate studies, I have friends from suppose medical or I don't know, but in undergraduate studies people develop a sense that you need to be right. If someone asks you a question, you need to be right. Whereas in design, the mindset that we have is that I just need to find out as many ways that I can be wrong so that other people don't have to. And once I found out 100 ways to be wrong, I can tell the next person that listen, if you're trying this out, don't try these 100 ways, maybe try this one way. So we as designers are focused on getting more things wrong rather than finding out that one perfect solution, right? And yeah, last tip is ask a lot of questions about everything. Design is everywhere. Design is not a subject, it's more about a process. And the more questions you ask about different types of things, the more, mm, I would say, you'd get a broader perspective of things, which is very important for design. So yeah, uh, I'll just stop sharing there. Abhishek, any questions?
Hi, Rhiddhit. Thanks a lot for that. I think that was a very, very detailed session on just pursuing this course at NID itself. So thanks a lot for that.
Yep,
Moving
yep,
on to the Q&A segment of this session. So to start
yep,
off with, my first question is with respect to, if I understand correctly, the NID DAT is divided into a prelims and a mains
yeah,
test. So could you elaborate a little bit about, to start off with, what exactly comes in the prelims test and how much time you would take to prepare for
right.
it, and so on and so forth?
So, so the prelims test is a set of multiple choice questions. It covers a variety of topics. The questions are, sometimes they ask questions. They give you a set of four logos, right? And they ask you which is the correct logo for Google Chrome, right? And you have to just mark that one. Sometimes they ask you to match designers to the work that they've done, right? So it's very like you I wouldn't say that there's a specific time period that you need to prepare for prelims for the NID DAT. I would say that the more you read about design from a different, like the more you read about design from books or watch YouTube videos and Netflix and all in that in your free time, the better it's gonna be, because the prelims for NID DAT does not have like a specific set of questions or a specific set of skills that they test. They just want to see whether you have been aware of design around you, right? So yeah, the NID DAT prelims part
All
one,
right.
the yeah, the common DAT exam, right? That has like 30 marks, right? Whereas the subject specific test that has 70 marks. So yeah, you were saying something, Abhishek?
Oh no, so sorry. I think I cut you off. Please go ahead. Yep.
Oh yeah. So the subject specific test, it's 70 marks, whereas the prelims multiple choice questions, it's 30 marks. Okay. And the 70 marks test, the subject specific test, that is subjective type. It's not MCQ. They might ask you, to design, like they might, for example, in my exam for information design, they gave me a set of a few images of flowers, right? And they asked me to convert those images of flowers into icons that can be used, for infographics or something. So that those are the sort of questions that might come. It's very subjective. And I think what is more important when you're giving the exam is to explain why you've done something in a certain way. A lot of people think that in the subjective test, doing the work in a manner that is neat and looks good and all that is the most important thing. However, the most important thing is that you need to understand that the person who's judging you has a entirely, probably 99% of the time, has an entirely different mindset towards design that than you have, right? So it's very important that you explain to them why you've done something, so that they can, sort of understand your way of thinking, even if it's very different from theirs. And they understand that yes, there is a logic behind what you've done, right? So that's where your marks count in the subjective test, right? I would not be able to tell you about all the different types of design stream tests that there are. I personally gave interaction design and information design, and in those it was more based on designing applications for mobiles, or designing interactive spaces, knowing about the Internet of Things, something like that. Yeah.
All right, moving to the next question. So
Yeah.
my next question is actually very specifically with respect to the NID DAT mains segment. And
Yeah.
if I understand correctly, there is a studio test and there's also a personal interview round.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think you touched upon the way you should answer in a personal interview round. I was
Right.
hoping you could elaborate a little bit more as to what is this studio segment and how exactly
Right.
could one prepare for it.
Right. So, like once again, whenever you say prepare, I don't know exactly how to answer, because what NID focuses on is more of who you are as an individual. And if I tell people this is how you should prepare, that's creating a set of people who are going to do the same thing in the exam, right? And NID is not looking for that. What NID is looking for, even in the studio test, even in the portfolio, is that you as a person know who you are and you're confident in that, right? In that, so they look for people who are confident to put out their ideas regardless of what you've done, whether you've done it confidently or not, whether you've stayed genuine to your own beliefs. In the studio test, they might ask, like I said, for example, one year they asked in information design to represent your life as a graphic, but don't use a timeline, right? And I might be able to help a little bit if I actually showed my interpretation of that question. Would that help?
Yes, yes, that'll be great.
Yeah, so hold on. I'll just find that file, and then maybe if I share it, hmm, people could understand. Just 2 minutes. Mhm. Yeah. Uh, is the screen visible?
Yep, it is.
Yeah. And can you see this? Okay, hold on. It's loading, I guess. Right. So, yeah, for example, like this was my interpretation of representing your life as an infographic, but not using a timeline. Okay. So I picked up the metaphor of a map, right? And I literally said I'm mapping out my life. So I converted, my life events, such as, if you look here, mm, life events such as studying architecture, or script writing, reading books like Roald Dahl. I converted them using my knowledge that I gained from architecture into, a sort of city map, right? And so this was how I sort of showed my life as an infographic, right? So someone else who's coming from an engineering background with a lot of coding knowledge, uh, they might have done something with, Python or Java or something. Some of my friends, they created like mobile applications and stuff like that. Okay, prototypes of mobile applications. But everyone's mm, result was something that they did, keeping in mind their undergraduate background. As someone from law school, you will really need to ask yourself, what do I bring to design as a lawyer, and represent that in your studio test somehow. That also becomes a point for them to talk about in the interview, right? If you, as a person attempting the studio test, have in your mind that maybe, like now that I've shown my interpretation of that question, if someone goes and says, okay, he's done a map of his life. That's a cool idea. Maybe I should also make a map of my life if I get asked that question. But if you as a lawyer do that, they might not like it as much because you're not really showing your background, a lawyer's background coming into design. It worked for me because I showed my architecture background through that, right? So that's something to keep in mind in your studio test and your portfolio, that they really want to see what background you come from. And it doesn't have to be a classical design background such as architecture. Even if you're from law, or even if you're from maybe education or biotechnology or whatever, you need to show that yes, I can relate my undergraduate degree to design, and it will definitely be a unique perspective. That's the most important thing for your studio test. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. I think now moving to my last question for today's
Yeah.
session,
Yeah.
could you talk a little bit about how someone could, let's say, like, rather, I think a better question would be when they should start planning out that, okay, these are the exams that I would want to take after my undergrad, and also what would be the right time according to you to make that
So
decision
yeah.
during your time at undergrad.
So to be very honest, I never during my undergrad thought that I would give NID or get into NID or study M.Des. For architecture is a 5-year course, and from the very beginning, I think first year, I had it in my mind that after I finish my graduation from here, from India, I'm gonna maybe go abroad to UK or US or whatever and do my masters in architecture there. I started preparing for that 2 years before my college ended, right? So I created a portfolio. I did a lot of architecture competitions, but not once did I have in my mind that I would give an exam or anything like that. The reason I actually signed up for the NID exam is because all my friends were giving GATE for architecture, and they were thinking about getting into IITs and all that. And my parents were a bit upset that I wasn't giving any exams, which normally happens if they know that everyone else is giving an exam, but you're not, they get freaked out, right? So I thought, okay, I could try NID. I didn't really prepare specifically for it. Um, I just gave it for fun. And I think most of my other friends who got into NID did the same. They did not really have it in mind that I'm going to prepare for NID or anything like that. They just thought, okay, I'll give the exam. If it works out, that's fine. If it doesn't, I'm still going to do something as a designer by myself. And whether I get into this college or not doesn't matter, right? So when you say planning for an exam, I don't think people should actually plan for the NID exam. I think the more you plan, the more narrow your mindset becomes. You start thinking in a very specific line or perspective, and that's the exact opposite of what NID looks for, right? I think for the NID exam, you should just know that, yeah, this is the date it happens. Maybe I'll read a few books before that. Maybe I'll watch a few movies related to design before that. But if you start thinking of getting into specific coaching centers or anything like that, you've already started going in the wrong direction. So planning for NID is not something that one would generally want to do, right? Sounds a bit weird, but that's how it is.
Nope, that makes sense. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
I think with that, I come to the end of all the questions that I had for today's
Yeah.
session. So
Yeah.
thanks a lot, Rhiddhit, for taking the time out, for making that presentation, and also joining us with the same. It was a
No
very,
problem.
very
Yeah.
insightful session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah.